Hey, welcome back to Heavy Thinkers, the show where we take everyday human behavior and flip it inside out. I'm Sophia.
And I'm Jack. And today we're talking about someone you definitely know. Maybe it's your friend who's been on Instagram for 4 years and has literally 0 posts. Or your coworker who has no LinkedIn. Or maybe, and I'm just putting this out there, it's you.
Yeah, maybe it's you. And if it is, first of all, hi, we see you, even though you clearly didn't want to be seen.
Okay, but that's actually the whole point, right? Because today we're diving deep into the psychology of people who don't post on social media. And I promise you it is so much more layered than they're just shy or they think they're better than everyone.
There is actual fascinating psychology behind this behavior, and some of it will make you rethink the way you use your own phone.
So let's get into it.
Okay, Rohan, let's start with the obvious question. You're a guy, you're on social media. I'm gonna guess you post occasionally? I mean, sure, I'll drop something here and there. A meme, maybe a photo from a trip. Nothing crazy. Right. And I'll be honest, I post more than you. I'm pretty active. But we both know people in our lives who just don't. Like completely radio silent. And what's interesting is that when I really think about those people, they tend to have certain things in common.
Yeah, and that's where the psychology kicks in. Because this isn't random. When a large group of people consistently behave a certain way, there is always a pattern underneath. And researchers have actually studied this.
So let's start with what I think is the biggest one. The one that honestly kind of stopped me in my tracks when I first read about it. It's this idea of internal versus external validation.
Okay, break that down.
So here's the thing about social media. It is at its core an external validation machine. You post something and then you wait. You wait for the likes, the comments, the shares, and your brain releases dopamine every time that notification pops up. It's literally the same reward loop as a slot machine. Which is not an accident, by the way. Those platforms were designed that way. Exactly. But people who don't post, they're not playing that game. Their sense of self-worth doesn't live in a number on a screen. Their identity is rooted in something internal. Their own values, their real relationships, the way they feel about themselves when no one is watching. And that is genuinely hard to build. Like, I think we underestimate how rare that actually is. Most of us, even if we don't want to admit it, care what people think. We just do. 100%. And I think the non-poster has either figured out something most of us haven't, or, and we'll get to this, they've had experiences that made them pull back. It's not always the same story. Right. So the internal validation thing is huge, but there's something else connected to it, which I find equally interesting. It's this concept of privacy as an emotional boundary. Oh, this one is personal for me, actually. Tell me. So when I was going through something difficult a few years ago, not going to get into specifics, but I just completely stopped posting. And what I realized was that putting my life online, even the happy parts, felt like handing strangers a map to my inner world. That's actually a phrase I came across in some research, and it just perfectly captures it. That's such a specific image, a map to your inner world, right? And for people who never post, that feeling is just permanent. They want control over their own narrative. They want to decide who knows what about them and when and why. And the internet doesn't offer that kind of control. Once it's out there, it's out there. And grief is a huge example of this. Think about when someone loses a loved one or goes through a breakup or gets fired. Some people post about it immediately. And that's okay. That's how they process. But others want to sit with it, heal quietly, and come back when they're ready. They don't feel like they owe the internet an update on their life. And honestly, that's so healthy. The pressure to publicly perform your healing journey is real, and non-posters just opt out of that pressure entirely. Short musical transition. Okay, can we talk about something that I think gets overlooked a lot when people try to figure out the non-poster? Because there's the... So social comparison is this thing our brains do automatically. You see what someone else has, and you immediately place yourself in relation to it. Are you above them? Below them? Are you keeping up?
And social media is the most efficient social comparison machine ever invented. You're not just comparing yourself to your neighbor anymore. You're comparing yourself to thousands of people simultaneously.
Everyone's highlight reel. Nobody posts the bad days. Nobody posts the argument they had, the anxiety they feel, the rejection they got. It's curated perfection. And your brain is measuring your regular Tuesday against someone else's best Saturday.
Which is a rigged game. You will always lose.
Always. And researchers actually call this the report card effect. Frequent posters can feel like their entire life is being graded by strangers in real time. And that creates a very particular kind of stress.
I felt that, honestly. You post something and then you watch the metrics and you're like, okay, why did this one get fewer likes than the last one? What did I do differently? Was it the caption? Was it the timing?
And your self-worth is now tied to an algorithm, which is terrifying when you say it out loud.
Non-posters sidestep all of that. They're not putting themselves up for public grading, and they're also not consuming as much of other people's grading. So the whole comparison loop is just quieter for them.
And studies consistently link this to lower anxiety, lower rates of FOMO, that's fear of missing out, and genuinely better emotional regulation. They're not riding that emotional wave of validation and disappointment over and over.
Okay, I want to bring up something a bit more nuanced here, because I think there's a temptation to listen to everything we've said so far and conclude that non-posters are just psychologically evolved humans who have it all figured out. And that is not always the case.
This is such an important point, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, because the science is actually really clear on this.
There's a difference between someone who doesn't post because they're genuinely thriving offline. They have rich real-world relationships, they feel secure in themselves, they've made a conscious choice, and someone who doesn't post because they're struggling.
Social anxiety is a real and huge factor here. There are people who desperately want to share something, who want to be seen, who want to connect, but the fear of judgment is so overwhelming that silence feels safer.
And that silence isn't peace. That silence is a symptom.
Exactly. And low self-confidence, I want to shift to something that I think is really beautiful about the psychology of non-posters. It's this distinction they make, often without even being able to articulate it, between attention and connection.
Oh, this is good. Say more.
So attention is when you want a lot of people to see you. You want the crowd, you want the numbers. Connection is when you want to be truly known by specific people. And those two things look really similar from the outside, but they feel completely different.
And social media is very good at delivering attention. It is genuinely terrible at delivering deep connection.
Right. You can have 10,000 followers and feel profoundly alone because none of those people know you. They know your curated feed. They know the version of you that makes good content.
Whereas non-posters tend to invest that same energy into direct contact. Phone calls, actual meetups, long conversations. Things where you have to show up as your real self without a filter or an edit button.
And there's something really psychologically safe about that. You're not doing a public audition every time you want to connect with someone. You're just talking to a person. I think a lot of people who post a lot would actually benefit from asking themselves, am I seeking connection or attention right now? Because sometimes the answer is attention, and that's fine, that's honest. But sometimes you think you're seeking connection, and you're actually just broadcasting into the void. And the void does not hug you back.
The void does not hug you back. That should be our merch.
Okay, Rohan, let's bring it home because I want to end on something practical. What can we actually take away from all of this? Whether you're a heavy poster, a casual poster, or someone who has literally never posted anything ever. I think the biggest lesson for me is the idea of presence over documentation. And I say this as someone who does post. How much of my life am I actually living versus how much of it am I staging for an imagined audience? That is the question, isn't it? And I think we've all had moments where we're at a concert or a dinner or a vacation, and half our brain is thinking about the caption instead of being in the experience. And when you notice that happening, it's worth pausing. The non-poster has basically trained themselves to just be in it, whatever it is. And that is a skill. You can learn it without deleting your apps. The second thing I take away is about validation. Specifically, where does yours come from? And this is worth sitting with genuinely, not defensively. Because if the